Hey everyone, sfreezy back to another set review, this time with Avatar: The Last Airbender. Unlike Spider-Man, I think this set looks cool as fudge. The mechanics are sweet. I love mostly all the bendings, and now, because I don't own these cards, we're going to go into the Shadow Realm, so please join me as I review first the Multicolor Commanders, then all the colors in Moonberg order, then Multicolor and colorless cards. And you can say hi to Mocha, my cat. Here she is. Hey Moki. Alright, so this time around we're going to start with the multicolor commanders first, because as the speed of releases is increasing, I know you mostly just care about, can I play this commander? What's going to be relevant for me? This set is Avatar: The Last Airbender, so it'd be fitting to start off with Avatar Aang. So I do think Avatar Aang is cool, but he requires a lot to maximize his potential, and the floor is already so dang high that the card is still very good. A 4/4 flyer for Wurg that draws a card whenever you use a bending ability, not a banding ability, and having firebending inherently means at a minimum, he draws a card when he attacks on a 4/4 flyer for 4, which is pretty great. And you're in red-green, so you have access to a lot of haste enabler to do this on the turn he comes down. Then if you use all 4 bending abilities in one turn, he transforms into a flying 6/6 that reduces your cost by Wooburg, which is obviously absurd. But then again, this is the Avatar state, so it's kind of fitting that it can use mana very effectively. It's the most powerful bender in the universe. And then for some reason, if you don't want that ability, you can transform him back at the beginning of anyone's upkeep, not just your own, to deal 4 damage to each opponent, put 4/1 counters on him, and draw 4 cards, which will help refill your hand to do it again. I would never consider this for the 99, but as a commander, you want to jam-pack waves with deck to Earthbend, Waterbend, and Airbend. Or alternatively, you could just cast Moon Mist to transform him, and then go absolutely ham. And you have blue, so you can find it with Mystical Tutor. But outside of kind of cheating the premise, this will definitely have a lot of concessions in deck building, but the card is powerful at face value. Boomy Unleashed is a certifiably insanely static creature, a 5/5 tramp that comes along with a 4/4 land creature. Then, whenever he connects with a player, with Trample, untap all lands you control, not just land creatures. For this phase, there's an additional combat phase. This combos with Unblockability and Aggravated Assault for infinite commander damage, once you had 5 lands with only 2 producing red. It also lets you ramp, and lets earthbending creature lands wall up your opponents. So you're going to want the embodiments of Fury and Insight from both the Gatewatch and also Sylvan Advocate, as well as just general landfall shenanigans like the New to Nook and cards of that nature. You do probably want to cast them on turn 6, this way you have the untapped land to attack your opponents with, but you're in green, so who am I kidding? It could be earlier. One fun upside to all the land creatures is, your board is basically immune to Cyclonic Rift. This guy is the King Boomy we all deserve. Speaking of things we deserve, finally an iconic villain done justice. Ozai Phoenix King is an arch enemy of a villain, a 7/7 with trample, firebending 4, meaning when he attacks you add 4 red to your mana pool, and haste to refund back 4 mana immediately. But wait, you might say, that mana will go away once you leave the combat phase. Just kidding, he lets you store mana as red mana between steps and phases, and if you have 6 or more stored, he gains flying and indestructible. Holy wow. I'm immediately scrapping my current Rakdos commander and building this guy. Be sure to look out for the video. I don't want to spoil too much, but this card is insane. Toph Hard-Headed Teacher is not her final form, and if you do want to do a spell-slinging deck that animates lands, she can do that, but this is definitely the first mediocre commander in multicolor, but probably a very exciting card for Wart the Raid Mother. Aang Swift Savior is more focused than Avatar Aang, but less exciting. You win counter wars, you can bounce creatures, you can bounce spells, which is really cool. The problem with airbending in this scenario is like, if it's your opponent's stuff, they get to pay 2 more to recast this stuff, and so if you bounce a big thing, it's much less effective, though they still have to follow timing restrictions. And then if they bounce your stuff, it's worse than a flicker because you're paying 2 more to cast it again. This card is definitely very flexible. It's not that powerful. The flip side is an okay Anthem effect, but it's attached to a medium-sized 5/5, and for 8 mana or tap creatures artifacts, that is woefully inefficient to get a 5/5 Trampler that will probably die by the time it's attacking, and it will pump your team a little bit. But only the tap creatures, so it's also ineffective as an overrun. This card is not good. Iroh Tea Master is our second Boros food commander this year, and while not as combo-tastic as the Gastronaut, he is still just a cool dude, giving food to opponents in exchange for allies that grow with the amount of food, or other permanents, potentially disastrous ones, see Steel Golem or Rust Elemental, that we give to opponents. It's ironic the bad guy turned good guy is best suited competitively to making bad trade deals all along. Suko Conflicted is not good. Sorry. Hang at the Crossroads is great in or at the helm of a Bant Flicker deck, but that's pretty obvious. The back doesn't relate to the front, but since you are a blink deck, return the better half of the card to play to retrigger the ATB when you blink it. Make sure your deck is chock full of creatures to ensure hit. Things like Spark Double and Guardian of Girapur can also chain together to give you multiple Aang triggers the second he comes down for a really fun like combo deck. The Lion Turtle being shoehorned into Lessons and not busted is a refreshing change for Simic, and once turned on, the 3/6 Vigilance Reach Body is no slash for 3 mana. Not to mention it's a mana dork until then. Azula Cutting Usurper is a mediocre thief deck option, letting you use firebending mana to pay for the cost and also play the spells mid-combat. However, she can only use the spells she exiles, which is only 2 on ETB. You need to be blinking her to make her effective in any way. Thankfully, she at least exiles a creature, acting as removal when she comes down, but this seems more like a card to put in 99 of some deck than to be as a commander. Iroh Grand Lotus screams Storm, giving all your spells flashback and lessens flashback for just one generic mana. This card is insane. He also gives you red mana to cast at least 2 instants when you're in combat. For some reason, WotC cannot make Universes Beyond Team or Spellslingers tame. Oh well, this card is cool, but you're going to be hit out of your playgroup if you play this as a commander. Sokka, Tenacious Tactician, makes an ally on non-creature spellcast, and he's a 3/3 menace prowess ally himself. Plus, he gives those abilities to allies you control. Jeskai misses out on some key pieces for allies, but treat this more like a Balmor / Talrand hybrid, Spellslinger commander that makes an army in a can, and the deck will perform well. This deck really wants anthems like Shared Animosity to pump all the allies. Firelord Azula is the one to run, doubling any spell you cast while she's attacking and having Firebending 2, so you have 2 red mana to get the flash spell ball rolling. This commander is sweet for flash spells, and if I wasn't so into her dad, I built her as a commander. But have you seen his abs? Side note, Leyline of Anticipation puts his deck on easy mode. Firelord Zuko is Mardu for a 2/4 that is firebending equal to his power, potentially adding a ton of red mana. He's also the first Mardu casting from Exile Commander, and pumps the team whenever you do so, as well as whenever you use a Flicker effect, a thing like Adventure, Suspend, Cascade. This works with so many more cards than you think it does. Even Madness discards into exile. All these effects will pump your entire team, so be sure the deck can go wide, and it will be very powerful. He'll also add an ever-increasing amount of red mana during combat, so be sure to pack a red instance. Guitarlo the Fearless is a generic ban allies commander that doubles stuff. Uninspired, but for allies it will be strong. Professor Zai is a piece for the 99 of decks like Real the Everwise, but not a commander. It's also probably solid in a Grixis Reanimator list. Toph, the first Metalbender, has so many synergies it's almost annoying, but this can give the Ozolith counters directly, animate vehicles, and do so much more. Definitely interesting, but be prepared for the table to have to read your cards constantly, which is worse when they all have counters on them. I'm not saying it's not strong, but the logistics of playing this commander may be a lot for an impatient player. Heck, I don't even like having too many different tokens. This is a strong commander, and will be built by some good players, but it couldn't be me. Also, for the love of God, do not run the textless version, that would be insane. 5-drop Azorius Katara, the Water Tribe's Hope, is a support piece for ally token decks. It's not good enough to be a commander. Despite being more powerful in the show, she will end up supporting her inept Jeskai older brother. Once again, the waterbending ability coming up short here, since she herself makes, let me double check, a single token. Her waterbending ability is effectively an overrun. The cost of the ability diminishes the effect of the ability. Sokka Bold Boomeranger is also sweet, letting you loot or double loot on entry, then he grows whenever you cast an artifact or lessen spell. Choose artifact, I promise they are more busted. It costing only isn't mana is also sweet. This gets down early and punches much harder than Sokka ever did in the show. This card is strangely powerful for the comic relief character. Then again, in the show, Sokka did have the Riz. The hybrid uncommon commanders are mostly support pieces. Uncle Iroh is a bridesmaid for Grand Lotus Iroh. Guru Pathic goes in Go Shintai, since he can dig for more shrines. I Bai goes in something like Felicia of Silverquill. Long Fang is sweet in something like Grakmaw, and it could both go in my Yoshi Reyhan deck, link in the description. The rest of the hybrids aren't great despite the people's protests. And maybe Suki, Kyoshi Warrior, could be the helm of budget aggro list. Jet is terrible for 5 mana, a 3/1. It is appropriate since that guy was a tool blinded by his own rage, so it works flavorfully, but the card is bad. Zhao and Hama are also terrible. With most commanders out the way, we're going to go into single color, starting with white. Momo Friendly Flyer is incredible as a 1-drop for any weenies flying deck, but also helps decks with larger flyers cheat costs. At 1 mana, I could even see this if a flyer's aggro deck in standard ever takes wing, however unlikely in the face of red deck's removal. I am definitely sliding this right into my Raffine deck. White definitely has an ally theme, so we'll delve into those cards together, starting with Hakoda Selfless Commander. Hakoda, following the you may play X spell that's off the top of your library that was just as obliged to every archetype, while also being a 3/5 vigilance with the ability to protect the team. His mana cost is constructed prohibitive, but he could be a low power commander, though realistically, he is an ally bridesmaid destined for the 99. Suki Courageous Rescuer is similarly underwhelming as a commander, but could be a fine support piece in an airbending ally deck, as she spawns allies whenever a permanent you control leaves the battlefield, which is the other main mechanic for white in this set. She pairs well with the best mono white ally commander in the set, Appa Steadfast Guardian. This is a legendary restoration angel in 2025, a flash flying 3/4, exiling any number of non-land permanents you control with the ability to recast them for 2 mana. Then, whenever you cast a spell from exile, you make a 1/1 ally token. You do cast them, so this goes hard with Oketcha's Monument, both reducing the casting cost and giving you a 1/1. Appa's Steadfast Guardian is stronger than the other two, but if you're playing allies, it's for the powerhouse support pieces, and notably, there are much more allies in other colors and from older sets, so it's unlikely mono white is the correct path for allies in Commander. This is, however, great board white protection in those decks. Speaking of support pieces for allies, South Pole Voyager is a Bear Soul Sister hybrid that when your second ally enters each turn, you draw a card. Not just your turn, so Suki can trigger this on multiple turns in a cycle. It also pairs well with Invasion Reinforcements, conveniently, flash creature that spawns 2 allies for just 2 mana. If you're in mono white, the card draw will definitely be needed, but the allies do look decent.
Either the White Lotus players will make tons of allies, specifically in mono white since it checks the number of planes you control, and for commander I think allies really do want more colors, otherwise I'll rate this card higher. Speaking of good ally cards, Unified Front lets you make X allies and put a counter on each creature you control and only costs 2 white to start. You can also put the counters without having the allies, but for sure you want to run this in an ally deck and any deck wanting to spam tokens. But if you are in allies, you can see why having green would help you because you could ramp out more allies. I also desperately want this for that aforementioned Ginny Fey deck. This card goes ham there. In decks with full Zendikar ally synergies, this will swiftly and decisively end the game. They can never make an equivalent card for Slivers, it would be disgusting. Airbender Ascension takes work in playing creatures, but most Blink decks will be doing that anyway, and then it becomes a Conjurer's Closet effect for 2 mana. It's not exciting, but every Blink deck will want this. So be prepared for it to waste time near you. Curious Farm Animals is a nice toolbox target creature in white, a hybrid of Caustic Caterpillar and a food token, which is morbidly fitting for farm animals. Being able to hit an artifact or enchantment is nice, and this one being in white makes it playable in Lurrus deck. Airbending Lesson is an interesting and flexible tempo option for Blink strategies in Commander, with the ability to be offensive or defensive, but is way too slow for constructed. Importantly, for the flicker mode of airbending, it is generally worse than regular flickering, unless you have important cast triggers, as the tax for you and your opponents is equal to recast the creatures. Southern Air Temple is a shrine, so obviously Goshintai is eating the setup, but amongst the shrines, this seems the most playable in other decks as it pumps the team. Airbender's Reversal is flexible and a card I would pick highly unlimited, either being a synergistic piece or removal at only 2 mana. And now for the best cards in white from the set that will see tons of play in Commander. At number 2 we have Avatar's Wrath, a one-sided pseudo-wrath that lets you keep a creature. Then you airbend all other creatures, meaning their owners can pay 2 mana to recast them. However, this spell forbids your opponents from doing that until your next turn. They cannot cast spells from anywhere other than their hand, also stopping commanders, play from exile decks, and graveyard decks with flashback, or cast from grave creatures. Also, Panglacial Worm decks, my favorite meme. This is a huge tempo swing, letting you replay to the board immediately, retriggering ETBs, and stopping opponents from redeploying. At 4 mana, this card is just the right price, and will function more like a Time Walk than a Wrath. Thankfully, it does exile itself to prevent gross Eternal Witness loops, but this card is still very good. The number 1 card that will see play in white is Enter the Avatar State, a 1 mana instant protection piece that gives flying, first strike, and lifelink. Great with any Death Touch creature or commander that needs protection. 1 mana is affordable, and the extra keywords for a turn are a massive upside over other versions that exist. Hot take, I think the Mythic Sagas are not actually that great, but Yang Chen is one of the better ones. It enters, and if your opponents cooperate, you can exile 4 permanents, but they can choose nothing, and you get 1 permanent. This works well if someone else isn't the archenemy, very poorly if you're the archenemy. So keep that in mind when deck building. The second ability is something I rarely ever want to do in Commander, and the backside is okay, but not worth a 3-turn wait in my opinion. If you're a great political player, I would run this card. I am not, and so I will not. Moving right along to blue, let's start with the low-hanging fruit. Wan Shi Tong Librarian is nutty. If Standard has a control deck, this seems amazing as a finisher. Flash, letting you hold a removal or counter spells is a must with how aggressive the format is, and this guy enters, blocks something, then has flying and vigilance to get an overhead, and then block again, leaving no window with shields down. Also, he's a Hydrate Crisis in a single color and grows whenever someone searches. Not to mention, he comes down as like a 6/6. In Commander, this will be a card advantage engine if anyone's in green, has fetches, or plays tons of other iconic cards in the format, like Tutors. Now for Blue's main mechanic, and probably the weakest represented bending archetype for this set, waterbending. Essentially a kicker slash convoke hybrid, you can tap artifacts and creatures to pay for additional cost of spells or activated abilities of permanence, which to me does not tie to the ebb and flow offense and defensive waterbending very well, or at least it appears purely defensive, seeing as all the costs are so high, your creatures and artifacts will often just be tapped down. Not to mention, this has such diminishing returns, whereas with water, the more water you have, the more powerful the vendors were. This archetype will only be viable if you can vomit out permanence, but then why not just use cards like Urza that win when that happens? Either way, there are some good cards in blue, just not that many. Obviously, the Spirit Oasis goes in Shrine decks, moving on. Accumulate Wisdom is absolute gasoline if a dedicated lesson deck exists, and if not, it's a lesson that's Anticipate, so control deck running just 4 of this card and our next card could easily exist. Eloquentia is a lesson that's actually better without the learn mechanic, letting your opponent know you've got the counterspell is weird. It's only slightly worse than Mana Leak in the deck, so Standard can use this to fight things like Vivi, if only Vivi didn't get it too. Just kidding, Vivi just got banned. Serpent of the Past is another flash blue threat that would love tons of lessons in a control deck, and a 6/5 body is no joke at potentially 2 mana. Unagi of Kyoshi Island is one of the best waterbending cards because your opponent pays the waterbending cost, not you. It's a 5/5 flash creature that lets you draw 2 cards whenever an opponent draws their second card in a turn. This card is great, and I can't wait to put it in my Mindskinner deck as an efficient beater with tons of upside. I think big blue bombs with removal spells could definitely be a deck that takes on Vivi and Standard, and these cards will definitely be in that deck. Sokka's Haiku is hilarious, and the mill 3 can put lessons in the yard. for both Accumulate Wisdom and Serpent of the Past. I really think lessons are the way to go in blue, not waterbending. Boomerang basics, being a pseudo boomerang effect on a lesson is nice, and the self-bounce letting you cycle is a solid upside, but this seems like a limited card mostly. Part of the strength of the original boomerang was hitting lands, and that was an instant. This is a sorcery. Tiger's Seal can be a very aggressive one drop if not for its tap and upkeep drawback. This is 99.9% a trap, since it constructed still dies to any removal. Constructed is cracked and will never be not cracked. This card will disappoint. And that's coming from me, a guy who likes cards with downsides, because I can fix them, like a deadbeat boyfriend, even when my friends tell me to let it go. I'm still trying to build Cosmic Wave in Modern. Ty Lee looks like a limited all-star, Frostlings but with flash, and you untap with a Props creature in play, and the opponent has one less blocker. The creature stays tapped as long as you control Ty Lee, so be ready to protect her. The Mechanist is a 3-drop that regurgitates clues, and that's the only important line for decks to be going, but it can also make those clues into 3/1s. You care that each non-creature spell makes you an artifact that draws a card, though. And this is one of the main cards I see keeping waterbending even remotely viable in them, but realistically, go the lesson route. However unfortunate it is that this is the only good waterbending enabler, the payoffs are good. The problem is, you'll likely not have the resources to waterbend effectively. Each waterbending spell uses the same resources, and you need to use so many resources. Nevertheless, here are the powerful waterbending spells, most likely relegated to Commander only. Spirit Water Revival, requiring Waterbend 6, puts it out of the realm of playability for Constructed. Outside of Pinnacle Emissary with Opal starts in Modern, nothing will have mana and bodies early, and even then, why not just cap a Cannoneer and bash your opponent with a growing, virtually hexproof, unblockable monstrosity? Or drop 1 mana Thought Monitors to add bodies to the board and draw cards, not tap your flying attackers, really defeating the purpose of putting them out in the first place. If you think this isn't a commander-only card, you're lying to yourself. I think a go-wide blue deck, ideally one that has vigilant creatures, could use this. Otherwise, it's mostly Divination with a virtual Pipe Dream attached to it. Even artifact spam decks that could run this often want more synergistic pieces, and that's if Vandal Blast doesn't gimp them first. Waterbender's Ascension is a similar problem, except the Waterbend ability isn't necessary to make the card good, which is why it is good and not terrible. You could play a 1-drop, and this, on turn 2, attack, then 2 more 1-drops, and when you attack on turn 4, you now have Coastal Piracy at home. Then you can tap creatures, maybe those without haste, to make things unblockable, to ensure more card draw. I don't think this is better than Binding of Thassa or Enduring Curiosity, the latter being sticky, having flash, and being attacker to trigger itself, but if you're in the market for a 3rd or 4th, this card exists. The blue Flip Saga is worse than white. Scry 2 then draw a card across 2 turns is extremely lackluster for a 4-drop card. Backside makes bodies on spellcast to actually feel waterbending, but only on the 3rd turn after casting it, so likely turn 6 at the earliest in Standard, which doesn't even exist, or turn 5 in Commander. And for waterbending, wait, that can't be right. 20, for that much mana, it should just win the game. This is so glacially slow and terrible. Benevolent River Spirit's additional waterbending cost is too high to even consider, just to get a flying beater. Secret of Bloodbending is quad blue pips, which is very demanding, but not as demanding as waterbending 10. To be fair, controlling combat is no joke, and Mindslayer at potentially 4 mana is gross. This card has high cost but a great reward, and in Commander, the failstate of controlling a combat is unique in blue and powerful, so among the waterbending effects, this one gets a pass. The best waterbending card in my opinion is Yue, the Moon Spirit, a 4-mana flyer with Vigilance, which is great when you want to tap it to pay for costs, but still be a functional game piece. Its ability to waterbend 5 to cast any non-creature spell from your hand without paying the cost is actually a reasonable cost and payoff for the ability, and I would even say a strong one. This as a commander could put Omniscience into play, cast a 5-mana Expropriate. Remember, you can tap things to pay the cost, but you could also just pay the mana. I think this is one of the most slept-on commanders in the set, and easily the best in mono blue. Next, you got the black cards for the set. Rise of Sozin being a Wrath would be great if it didn't cost 6. Still, this is impactful when it hits, unlike the blue one. It's an odd case where 6 mana is only playable on Commander, while the second ability is incredibly late to the party and constructed, coming down on turn 7. It does massively hose any deck that relies on a single card, and any kind of Thrumming Stone deck, like the Bunnies deck or the Petitioner's deck, is just murdered by that second ability, and that's hilarious, though. His flip side is actually very powerful in a deck with excess mana, something firebending decks are sure to have, but as is the case with most of these, in Commander nowadays, you can't afford to wait that long. Still a fine card, but would be better suited for Commander if the second ability wasn't virtually a do-nothing, unless you snipe an interaction or combo piece from someone's hand. Phoenix Fleet Airship is glacially slow, do not run this card. Kill the Face Stealer is a really cool control win con / hate piece and combo enabler, much like Necrotic Ooze. This is the downside of needing creatures to die, not just be in the grave. However, when it enters, you get removal on a 6/6 stick. This card is definitely worth considering just for the ETB, although Necrotic Ooze gets all abilities and costs 2 less, so it's likely a much better card. Still, this card is, at the very least, interesting and powerful, my favorite of the Black Mythics. Raven Eagle is arguably better Graveyard Trespasser, lacking the Ward ability and the 4/4 backside, but notably also lacking the Daylight mechanic, so that alone makes it better in my book. You can run this for increased standing of your table, but in Constructed it also makes you a clue token when you exile stuff to draw cards. Whenever you draw a second card each turn, each opponent lose 1 life, you gain 1 life. This is any turn, not just your own. and it comes with a clue token to enable that. So this card's very good. It's self-contained, and it's graveyard hate, and it's a flyer. Plus, one downside for Graveyard Trespasser in Modern is that some decks want to discard a reanimation target into the yard, and so helping them do that is a problem. Obsessive Pursuit is one of the best ways to fuel waterbending, which is kind of flavorful since Katara grew stronger after opposition. It also goes great in decks like Crackmaw or any Aristocrats deck with counters, and the clue tokens are great allies for firebending decks to use their excess mana at instant speed. Black is great as a support color for blue or red this set. It also brings great removal like Day of Black Sun, which punishes indestructible creatures in Commander, but unlimited, and messes with earthbending lands. Fire Nation Drill gives an additional version of the Shadowspear effect on a removal piece, and a 6/3 trampling body with a low crew cost of 2 isn't a bad rate. Epic Downfall and Heartless Act are reprints and great removal options, and limited it's 2 mana instant and sorceries. Sold Out is expensive, but it exiles, and the clue token is card draw to pay for later, and a permanent to waterbend. Notably, you sacrifice clues without having to tap them, so you can pay for waterbending by tapping it, then sacrifice it in the same turn. Ruinous Waterbending is one of the better cards of the ability, since as a mini sweeper, you can tap your creatures that would die to the ability for the bonus effect. Ironically, one of the best waterbending cards isn't even in blue. Foggy Swamp Visions lets you exile creature cards from graveyards based on the mana you waterbended, then gain copies of them to trigger their ETBs, and you get death triggers as well when they're sacrificed. Cat Gator costing 7 is a lot, but if you do have 7 swamps, your opponent's in for a world of hurt. I just don't think this is that good. Zuko's Conviction is a flexible instant speed reanimate or raise dead, but at 5 mana it's not super powerful. The creature does come in tapped as well, meaning you can't ambush something in combat. Boiling Rock Rider is unique in that it's instant speed graveyard hate without a mana cost. You can also target your own spells and recast allies from among those cards for graveyard based card advantage. Ally decks in black will definitely want this card. Also, Shapeshifter Typal decks will definitely want this card. My Scornful Striker is a mono black group slug piece, probably going into Mogus, Valgavoth, and Liesa Shroud of Dust decks, but not many other places. I do want to try this in Modern as an aggro piece, but this card is pretty good, not powerful enough to be a commander. Azul on the Hunt can draw whenever it attacks, and the clues it makes can be saved for a turn you aren't using your firebending mana. Definitely support for another commander or a firebending deck. The Shrine goes in Shrine decks, obviously. But this one being so cheap and the new ones being so powerful, I kind of wonder if these might go into Gen as well. Buzzard Wasp Colony goes great in commanders like Reyhan or Grakmaw. Basically, any deck that wants the OG Ozolith wants this bird. Ozai's Cruelty is a lightning in Standard, and any learned deck in black will want it. I do think the Mirror Lessons will be a contender in Standard, and this is an option for the Control Mirror if it arises. Also, Daily Indoctrination is a flexible playable lesson. I do think all these cards will get significantly better once Strixhaven is in Standard. Now we can finally move on to Red, who got some real heat this set. Fated Firepower having Flash makes it an excellent mana sink for firebending decks. Also, decks like Neheb, the Eternal, and other burn decks will want this as well. Sozin's Comet is an insane mana production card. It also has Foretell to split the mana cost. This card is so powerful, it's ridiculous. If you pair this with Comet Storm, which is flavorful, for catastrophic instant speed damage to each opponent, you'll probably win the game. Roku's Flip Saga is one of the better ones. Impulse drawing 3 into the end of your next turn on the first trigger, and on the second turn, it even helps with an additional mana to cast those spells that you can cast that turn as well. Also, firebending decks are the most likely to have extra mana to use the first chapter. Its flip side making an army of firebending dragons is no slouch either. This Flip Saga works the best in its shell of what we've seen so far, and once you get enough firebending dragons, they will fuel themselves. Zao the Moonslayer is on curve and slows down opponents. Mayhaps Mono Red will make a comeback. This may even see play in Modern. I would love to see a resurgence of Sly after MH3. Firebender Ascension is excellent, as it's easy to turn on by everything Red is doing this set, then doubles mana production from all of your Firebenders, as well as other attack triggers. Most importantly, this one comes with an on-curve body, so the card isn't a dud. It immediately makes a 2/2 that fuels itself. It will notably copy each Firebending ability and other attack triggers, but let's be real. If you're running this, you're probably going all in on Firebending. The last Agni Kai lets you kill off a small creature and retain excess red mana, so this card is an excellent pick if you are doing Firebending. Ran and Shaw could be an argument for a blue-red lesson control deck, as making 2 flying 4/4 for 5 is a great rate, and they get you 4 mana back the following turn. However, I would not run these outside a dedicated dragon or lesson deck. A 5 mana 4/4 flyer is less than lackluster. Firebending Student is likely the replacement for Vivi once it's banned, and Mono Red Aggro is looking like a scary possibility in Standard with Vivi and Cauldron out of the picture. Redirect Lightning is finally a playable redirect effect for Modern. It's about time to give Red a way to fight Belcher outside of trying to jam a Blood Moon. I'm going to have a spicy deck for Modern Gameplay video with Justin once all these learned cards come out. Wartime Protesters is an argument for ally decks being at least Boros, giving haste and a counter to each other ally, as well as being a hasty 4/4 itself. Tiger Dillo is going right into my Dragonhawk deck and probably nowhere else, but I'm excited for that card. Price of Freedom is solid non-basic land hate with useful lesson typing, and it also has artifacts. Kick those dirty Tron and Eldrazi players in the shin so they can't stand, please. You're doing the Lord's work. Red Mai is more potent with Double Strike and Prowess combination, and I could see it in a deck with Firebending Student, but too many legends is often a recipe for failure in aggro. I was never a Raga fan, and that's a 1-drop that can ramp for some reason. Shrine goes in Shrine deck, blah blah blah. Zuko Exile Prince is one of the best allies for Firebending mana. What a shame. He would work so well with his father if only they didn't have that minor tension between them. Everything changes when the Fire Nation attacks. At instant speed, you make 2 Firebenders. The mana cost may look steep, but this is an instant, and you're making red mana during combat. And the following turn, both those tokens will Fire Breathe you back 2 mana. Firebending Lesson is also a great removal spell pickup, as better Burst Lightning versus creatures, but you lose the option to go face, in a deck where you are also more likely to have the kicker mana. Fire Nation Cadets is also a push 1-drop. In limited, red aggro is looking sweet, especially if the waterbenders are just derping around. Lastly, for limited, access to Lightning Strike is always nice. It's a shame the best decks are always in red, or maybe, just maybe, they could get Bolt back in standard. As always, green is representing. They have a counter sub-theme, but Earthbending steals the show. The Earthbend mechanic is very unique, and as a whole is moderately strong, with some insane standout cards. When you Earthbend X, put X1/1 counters on a land, and you make it a creature. Also importantly, unless it's bounced, when the land is removed from the battlefield, it will be returned to play tapped. This works insanely well with Eudora Grove Gardener as a commander, because they come back as creatures. It also works with MDFCs that will come back as creatures, if they're creatures on the front side. It also works great with creature lands, because they keep the counters and they get turned into creature lands and have a buff of being whatever their stats normally were. And also they have insurance to come back when they die. Lastly, these creature lands are immune to Cyclonic Rift, so Earthbending as a strategy has a leg up against that notorious blue instant. Now for those cards. Badgermole Cup is a 2-mana 2/2 that makes a 1/1 out of a land, but the land doesn't untap. On curve, you make a tap 1/1, still solid. However, the second line of text was absurd. Whenever you tap a creature for mana, you get an additional green. This obviously goes hard with mana dorks and also the new Earthbended lands, though will have tension with the ability, since if I was putting a bunch of counters on my lands, I would want them to be attacking, not tapping for mana.
Despite being an Earthbending Mythic, I do think this goes more in like a Kinnan type deck than it does in an Earthbending deck, but it's still fine there.
The Legend of Kyoshi is probably the best for commander, as green will have 6 mana with ease, and then it becomes Soul's Majesty on the first half, which is already a 5 mana card. Judge Sagas like Planeswalkers. The first activation or ability needs to be worth most of the mana for the spell. There is no guarantee you'll resolve all of the effects. If you get to 2, those combined abilities should be worth more than the mana you paid. Since you're front-loading an investment of mana, you want interest on the effects. This is why the full saga often looks so juicy. Mana in the pool is worth 2 in the bush, or something like that. Anyway, the second effect will hopefully turn off one of your lands into a massive beater. And her flip side is a 5/4 that gives all your mana lands and earthbound lands trample and hexproof. Great Divide Guide likely pushes the ally deck into at least Naya, but he could hold a 5-color deck on his back. However, placing a linchpin of your strategy on a small creature may be unwise in a format condition to have turn 1 removal or die to mice. This card perfectly fixes mana though, so it'd be great in a 5-color commander deck, especially allies. I expect this guy to be a pretty penny. People like 5-color a lot because they lack creativity. Earth and Ally is a pushed 1-drop for allies, probably being a 2/2 on turn 2 and growing as the game progresses. If allies are at least 3 colors, this guy will be a powerful 1-drop. Unless you have a Great Divide Guide in play, the second ability is unlikely to happen, but it's just upside, and definitely possible, albeit unlikely. Earthbender Ascension is very pushed. It's rampant growth that costs 1 more mana, and you get an entire card for that 1 generic mana. Like the rest, it needs 4 quest counters, but it's triggered by landfall, so it immediately spoon feeds itself 1 when it rampant grows. Those dark green players not paying their taxes. At least the payoff of landfall put a 1/1 counter somewhere isn't crazy, but definitely good. And the quest is just make land drops in green. That's more of a pleasant stroll. Avatar Destiny is absolutely sweet in decks like Diamond Weapon or Jiraiya Golgari Lichlord, and I am so hyped for mono green reanimate effects. It pumps creatures for each creature in your graveyard. Very flavorful since the Avatar is so powerful, since their lives are linked with past versions of themselves. It also reincarnates when something dies, and propagates the power of the spell with Self-Mill. This is the green card from the set I'm most excited to play, mainly because it probably should have been a green-black card, but don't tell anybody. The Earth King is a sweet stompy commander and a fine include in any Power Matters deck. Effectively a 4 mana 6/6 across 2 bodies, and then whenever any number of creatures with power 4 or greater attack, you get to rampant growth that many times. This will very quickly get out of control, and as a 4 mana split 6/6, I would first pick this unlimited every time. Elemental Teachings is an upgraded Realms Uncharted for additional mana, but your opponent chooses what to put into play. Great for decks like Soul of Windgrace and Windgrace himself, and Hearthhold the World Seed. Basically, anything where life in the low makes you cream your pants a little, you want this card. Rock Avalanche is the best of the cycle for if you control this basic land type, also with flashback. This card is powerful and limited. Mono green commander decks as well, like my Kodama the West Tree that loves Snow Forest and playing Glacial Worm. Shared Roots is just a lesson rampant growth in standard, so green is getting goodies ahead of schedule. Seismic Sense is an even better lesson, letting you dig for a creature or land as deep as the number of lands you control for a single mana. In the late game, this could look at 7+ cards for a single mana, and you're in green, so for being realistic, it's 10+ cards. True Ancestry is regrowth, but you get a clue, so definitely an upgrade, but maybe still too slow for commander, as I have a deck in green that cares about clues like Lonus,
Or also Lonus.
I still think Ball Gate Recovery being a land when you need it is probably better. If I wanted this effect twice, this card exists. It sucks that green Uncommon Boomy costs 6 mana, as he was a crazy character from the series and looks pretty weak here, but there are at least solid green lessons to support him and ramp, and him being a teacher who provides direction for Aang is at least flavorful with the way his card works. But again, I wouldn't run this card. The 5-drop Gruul Boomy is just so much better. Of the shrines, Kyoshi Island Plaza would be insane. His shrine decks run often 5 color and nearly bereft of basics. but rampant growthing for each of a permanent you control is wild, especially since after it's down, each time Goshen Tide blinks, you get a land. I really hate how spoon-fed decks like Shrines are because players think it's their cute little deck, and maybe it was 6 years ago, but now they have so much support it's disgusting. Invasion Tactics is a sweet non-invasive overrun for allies, combined with a Toski effect. This card will see play as a curve topper / finisher in allies, if not in standard, then at least in commander. Speaking of allies, Allies at Last has affinity for allies, and lets 2 creatures bite something for as little as a single green if you have 2 allies, which you should because you're playing an allies deck. Card is great in allies decks, pretty obvious. Cabbage Merchant is actually OP and I'm here for it. In the series, this guy's whole airtime is getting his cabbage stand wrecked and crying, "My cabbages!" while his dreams of being a cabbage merchant and his product were gratuitously and repeatedly destroyed. And he's actually an insane payoff for food decks. I can't wait to put this in my Eater of All deck. Rampant growth on every stack of food, and it comes with the food. Talk about value. Someone get this man set up with a business, probably in a safer neighborhood than he's used to. Toph the Blind Bandit is a natural commander for an Earthbending mono green deck in bracket 2. Not too impressive, but she will hit hard. She is a 3-drop with power equal to the number of 1/1 counters and lands you control. Her 3 toughness is definitely a letdown. The green lessons are actually so good. They made a lesson that is Harrow without the sacrificing land the cost, but the land comes in tapped. Cycle of Renewal is still great, with additional spell typing that will be relevant. There's also a split card lesson that is Disenchant or Protection Piece that adds a counter for 1 and a green. Origin of Metal Bending has Sweet Art with Toph in it, and I pay an extra mana for my Protection Piece to have utility in a game where somebody else is the target. Next, we have multicolor cards that are not commanders. Bitter Work is sweet for 4 power matter decks, and card draw for Gruul. Dilate Agents is actually so pushed, giving Golgari counters decks obscene reach. I cannot wait to showcase all these cards in a Grackmall list. It comes with 2/1 counter creature bodies, then drains for life equal to the number of creatures you control 1/1 counters on them. In the decks this is run in, that's going to be all of your creatures. Nightfall's Bounty Hunters are great as well. Whenever an online creature you control dies, Urban X or X is their power. This means that whenever anything dies, you get a giant land creature of the same size. This card is so good. This works excellently with Greater Good because you can sacrifice the land and have it come back into play, tapped, and then sacrifice a creature. Use that same tapped land to become a creature, sacrifice that again, chaining through your entire deck. This card is a sneaky combo piece, and I am here for it. I cannot wait to put this in my Gerard deck. This will go insane. This is probably one of the sneaky best cards in the entire set. Like, not even close. Combos with Eudora Gravegardener, a sack outlet, and a drain outlet for infinite drain. This card is a combo engine. It's going to make you big creatures. It's going to give you fodder. It's so good. Wolves of War is a 2-mana cardboard creator for Orzhov that will do wonders in an ally deck, but it's not super impressive overall. It also does create a clue on entry for additional value and is castable in a Luris deck. White Lotus Reinforcements is an Anthem on a body for allies. That's also an ally. It goes in all allies decks. Even better is Earth King's Lieutenant. This is an ally equivalent of Thalia's Lieutenant, but it also gets trample. So ETBs pump all your allies, and then allies pump it. This card goes in every allies deck that is in Selesnya, which should be every allies deck. In part due to its own existence, this card is so good for allies, you're running it if you're running allies. Vindictive Warden is an ally for firebending for those commanders. I know I'm putting it in my Ozai deck because it's just a way to just dome the table for a ton. Sandbender Scavenger goes perfectly in any aristocrat's deck as it grows larger and reanimates when it dies, but it's especially perfect for Luris decks since it costs 2 or less CMC. Sun Warriors is a 4-drop that has firebending X or X is the number of creatures you control. This goes in probably all ally decks because of the second ability, you can channel all that mana to make a ally for each 5 you spend, which in an ally deck this will go absolutely absurd. Definitely Naya allies at a minimum, but probably 5 color. Now for artifacts. There are some bangers for niche decks. Walls of Bossing Say is the highest toughness creature ever, and gives the team indestructible. This goes great with cards that remove Defender, and make creatures deal damage equal to their toughness. Pride of Holclade loves drawing 30 cards off this. I was never a Big Butts commander player, but this is a big butt I cannot lie. White Lotus Tile goes in typal decks as a second 3-tree city. Notably does not require mana to activate, but it does cost 4 mana to play. It also unfortunately enters tapped. However, this will ramp with only 1 or 2 creatures, whereas 3-tree will not. Planetarium of Wan Shi Tong is a great engine for control decks, or something like Etali Primal Conqueror. Just keep setting up your draws and top decks and snowballing value. Meteor Sword is definitely a bad card, but it's very good exactly with Stoneforge Mystic. So I'd be curious to see if this sees any modern play, but definitely Commander, it's another card for your Stoneforge toolbox decks. Aang's Journey is great for Shrine decks, and is an upgraded Environmental Sciences from original Strixhaven. Lay of the Land and gain 2 life for 2 mana, but for a kicker of 2, you can tutor for a shrine. But for why, Wizards? Why does Goshen I need all these cards? Bender's Waterskin isn't good enough to make waterbending work, sorry, but it's a solid rock. Finally, lands. Each color pair gets its own tap duel that sacrifices to draw a card. Fine budget options and better in green decks with land recursion, obviously. Jasmine Dragon Tea Shop is the obligatory land for every ally deck, making tokens and being a 5 color for allies. White Lotus Hideout is similarly the lesson or shrine deck auto include, Not very hot takes here, sorry. Secret Tunnel being for typo text makes it worse than Rogue's Passage, but it does hit 2 creatures and is a cave for cards where this is relevant, mostly spelunking to gain 4 life. Or Cave of 2 Lovers in limited. Now for the set's juicy land cycles end on a high note. These all enter tap unless you control a basic land, and their abilities are mostly strong. Since I am judging these as upside on most likely untapped colored sources of mana. Abandoned Air Temple taps for white, and tap it in 4 mana to pump the whole team with a 1/1 counter. Excellent addition to any 1 or 2 card build with white, especially go wide decks. Agna Kayla is a 3 mana to loot. In blue, I would not run this outside of a Reanimator deck, but there it is once again excellent. Realm of Ko is 4 mana and itself to spawn a mostly unblockable creature. It will clamp, and my Gix deck will find space for this card. Fire Nation Palace is a ramping land in red during combat, but needs to go in a deck where you can capitalize on that mana. And green is second best of the cycle to white. Bossing Say itself can earthbend your lands into 2/2s with counter synergies that come back after being removed unless they're bounced. That does it for Avatar. I really love this set, and the flavor was on point. The cards are all powerful. I'm sorry the video was so long, but the cards were interesting. I wanted to make sure you got to at least see the cards that could be relevant, limited, modern, commander, etc. Especially after Spider-Man being so terrible, I wanted to do the set justice. If you have a favorite I missed, let me know in the comments. As always, I'm sfreezy, and you will soon have a new set full of sweet magic cards, so get to brewing.